Well, hello Torchwood fans, I hope you're all well. Welcome back to another Torchwood Big Finish audio drama review. In today's review, I'm going to be taking a look at a rather exciting box set release. It is the fourth volume of Torchwood Soho, entitled Ascension. As always, written by James Goss and featuring the excellent Torchwood Soho team, including Samuel Barnett as Norton Folgate, Dervla Kerwin as Elizabeth Hayhoe, Joe Shire as Gideon Lyme, and of course Tom Price as Sergeant Andy Davison. As always with this series, of course each individual box set is standalone. There is a few references here and there to previous events, but you don't need to listen to them in order to understand this series, and as always it has also taken inspiration from the old Quatermass. Of course it's set in the 50s, and it is a very unique and different take on Torchwood. So without further ado, let's get into this rather exciting box set. The cover art for this one is absolutely incredible, as not only do we have one cover art, we have two. Sean Longmore has done a superb job, and it perfectly replicates the rather bizarre nature of this box set, being focused around love, faith, and belief, and everything in between. So the end of the world is nigh, the Ascension is coming, and Torchwood is trying to figure out what on earth is going on. We are back in the 1950s with our Soho regulars Norton, Elizabeth, Andy and Gideon, and little pockets of Ascension believers are popping up throughout London, all believing the world is coming to an end, except each group is predicting a different day, which isn't exactly that handy. So is there anything in it? So in case you're unaware of how Torchwood Soho pans out as a series, it has a rather unusual yet addictive format of 6 roughly 30-minute installments. And this is something completely unique for Torchwood with this series. It's something that I thought that I would hate, but I think with this series I really love it. It works so well. The box set overall is one big story, but these smaller bite-sized episodes give each installment direction and purpose. But it also helps to really build up the suspense. Weirdly, if anything, it makes the overall story feel much bigger than it would if it was just 3 one-hour episodes. And it also means that you don't need to factor in, oh, I've got an hour, I'll listen to some big finish. Trying to slot in half-an-hour stories throughout the day is so much easier, when in reality there's not really much difference. But I got through this box set, as I've done with the previous Torchwood Soho box sets, incredibly quickly, sheerly down to the format. And given the varied members of the Torchwood Soho team too, I think it's a great way to give each character adequate attention and purpose. So to start with, Elizabeth, Gideon and Andy are tasked with uncovering 3 different Ascension groups to see what is going on, and all are met with rather similar experiences. The sense of belief and imminent world-ending scenarios bring these people together until boom, and they all vanish, often accompanied by a rather large explosion. And Norton must once more open up the rather tricky can of worms, which is the relationship between Torchwood and the UK government. And as always, everyone has their own agendas. Plot itself builds up like a mystery throughout, especially within the first 3 parts. The Ascension is getting bigger and bigger, and of course the government want to tap into whatever this thing is to use to their own advantage and naturally develop into a global weapon. Soho as a series is a really interesting balance between, yes, technically historical Torchwood, but also the themes that it explores are so prevalent within society today: corruption, self-interest, self-preservation, and those in power abusing trust. The scenes which take place later on within this story are especially quite bleak. It doesn't quite dwell on those matters for too long, because everyone we follow is somewhat in the know. It's Torchwood, it's day-to-day life for them. But when you pause as a listener to reflect on the story's contents, it is in fact very, very unsettling, and the way that it taps into people's minds, the obsessions that people have with Ascension, with going to heaven, with finding peace, despite the result clearly staring them in the face. It's very thrilling as a listen overall. But also I think because belief and faith is something that can extend, of course, beyond religion and generally just believing in things as a whole, what comes next, life aspirations and goals, I think because of that there is a very personal element to this story as well, which in itself challenges the various relationship dynamics throughout, not only within Torchwood and the government, the people within government, the people who are operating within these units and teams to figure out what this mysterious force actually is. So this story really tests the relationship between Norton and his team, and the fact that he is basically a major backstabber and manipulator, as always. But this story hits much closer to home. I think Samuel Barnett portrays that really well. Norton is a really confusing person, I think. His heart can be in the right place, but the way that he gets there is in itself quite baffling. He will throw people under the bus and then he will come back to them and pick them out of the bus again, and he almost expects appreciation from them, because even though he's used them as a pawn within his game, I think he feels like they should be grateful that they are still alive because of him, which that's not really how relationships and friendships work. Joe Shire too as Gideon Lime, this really caring, calm figure. He is plunged into the life of Torchwood and trying to keep his relationship with Norton afloat. I mean, they've got a dog, so they're halfway there. I really do appreciate Joe Shire's emotional performances within this release, and the way that James Goss writes the script overall, the subtleties of being a black male within the 50s, the points of which where he talks about getting directions from the locals and they just so happen to give him the wrong directions or don't help at all. It doesn't really dwell on those facts, the dialogue simply brushes them off. It's another thing which goes on in day-to-day life, but it adds so much depth to the script because as well as the whole Alien and Torchwood stuff going on, these people are still dealing with the struggles and hurdles that are within this time period, but again are still present within society today. I must admit I was a little bit worried for Elizabeth Hayhoe within this one, as she does take quite the back seat within the first few parts of this box set, but rather brilliantly, the lead does almost shift from Norton to her in the second half. Norton is definitely leading at the very beginning. We have some great moments with him as he again plays people a little bit, especially the moments with the government. He's kind of telling the people at Torchwood that everything's going well, the government are listening to him, and then that crosses to the scenes with the government where everyone's just completely shrugging him off. He's not a respected figure, he's not someone that people who want to listen to, he's not taken seriously, he's just seen as someone who believes that they have contact with aliens, which naturally doesn't go down very well. And again, that power balance, it's seeing Norton as the leader of his own little world, but when you extend that world, things start to crumble. But when it comes to Elizabeth, I don't feel like, as a big fan of the character within this series, I don't feel like I got enough from her that I certainly wanted. Again, she's a very flawed character. She can be emotional at times, she's caring for people that perhaps Norton wouldn't care for, but again, she's rather prickly at the same time. You wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of her. She gets the job done and she has a particular way of doing it that people probably won't agree with, but again, she's a little bit of a backseat driver when Norton has kind of took charge of Torchwood. She's the one that keeps the ship sailing. I don't think that this box set quite uses Dervla Kirwan enough, and on that note, why isn't she on the cover art again? It's really starting to bug me, as she's such a great character, and to make matters worse, there's two covers with this box set and she's not on either of them. And again, that is not a criticism of the cover art is beautiful, and I must admit it will be quite difficult to put Elizabeth on a cover art. We've had it once within the main range, and I think they needed to de-age Dervla a little bit, which I do get the challenges of that, but hopefully one day we will see her on a cover art front and centre. In fact, I would go as far to say I really want the next series of Torchwood Soho to really focus on Elizabeth as a character, give her the much needed limelight and power to shine. In fact, part of me wonders even having a box set which predates Volume 1, being Parasite, would be a good idea. Of course, Andy wouldn't be present due to the events within that series, but I love the whole setup of that series, the exploration of Torchwood geographically being based within Soho, and the dynamic between her and Norton. It's something of which that I think we've moved on from a little bit too soon, a little bit too quickly. Even though the series is called Torchwood Soho, we are barely even in Soho as the series takes place. And for those of you that have listened to that first volume, you will know, because of the way that that box set unfolded, you'll be able to appreciate why recapturing the exact environment seen within that box set is quite difficult due to the events of Parasite. But I think something similar to that, a little bit more grounded, because these box sets are very big, they're all world invasion, and because of the scale of them, I think sometimes you lose the smaller elements of the series. I miss having the likes of the Torchwood hub, something to give the series a little bit of centrality. It may sound small because it's just a geographical location, because Torchwood 3 has Cardiff Bay, Torchwood 1 has Canary Wharf, but I think it does mean a lot because it is a fixed location that the characters can go away, do things, but ultimately come back to at the end as well. And at the minute, I think that this series' equivalent of that is Norton as a character, and having a character as that central thing sometimes doesn't work, which I guess for Doctor Who, I mean, that is the whole point. The Doctor is kind of the centre of the show, the TARDIS is the centre of the show. But when you've got a series like Torchwood, it's an Earth-based organisation. Currently, I feel like we've got an organisation that doesn't have a HQ. I do think pushing Andy within this set emotionally also really extends the impact. He's a man not from this time period, and maybe sometimes as a listener I do forget that. And the effect that this story's events have on him is really going to be exciting to explore within the future of this series. There's definitely implications, and hopefully future box sets explore that further. Even though this series has gone far beyond Soho, I do also like its global sense of implication. The UK government trying to utilise powers for their own means, be it to threaten and deal with other states, but also eventually it's somewhat turning against its own people too, for its own rather selfish gains. It's an excellent yet brutal commentary on power and looking down on others. Having Norton also at the centre of this, biting off more than he can chew, even having Michael Higgs within this set as Reverend Edward Fulgate, the father of Norton, it feels really weird. You get this glimpse into Norton's past, the relationship with his parents, where he grew up as a kid. And as Norton feels out this rather mysterious and unknown figure, it feels quite wrong to learn more about his background, but also quite exciting too. And again, the little subtleties within Samuel's performance, the way that he alters his performance when talking to his dad, is probably my favourite scenes within this whole set, as it takes Norton away from all the action and drama, lets the others deal with that. Meanwhile, we have him talking to his father and doing very normal everyday things like having breakfast with him, or at least trying to. It's him returning to his small world upbringing and small world problems that bring him far away from being that Torchwood game player. And of course, again, the wider implications of that on the other characters within this set too, and the way that others are left with responsibility to pick up the pieces. I think if you've heard from this series before and like the central team, you'll probably get a lot more out of this set than newer listeners who haven't listened to those previous stories. And that is simply because the supporting roles are quite brief. There's not much exploration of them, and even the main foe, I guess, if you could call that within this set, you don't really know much about them. Again, they're this mysterious force, so the focus is entirely on Torchwood themselves. Perhaps the exception to that who do receive exploration are Father Dinsdale and the returning character of Armitage. Dinsdale in particular, I like how he develops as a character throughout the series, as the events around him also change. It's a really enjoyable set, the characters interact wonderfully, and it's packed with jokes which made me smile throughout, and a very sinister, bleak plot beneath. This series, without a doubt, is always a treat. I have high hopes for it from the previous sets, but also for the future sets as well. But I am waiting for a box set to leave me completely astounded and blown away. And I think the series definitely has potential to do that, and whilst this set isn't the one that does it, I certainly think it is still very enjoyable, but also provides hope that there is a lot more to come in the future. So thank you very much for watching this review of Torchwood Soho Ascension. I really hope you have enjoyed it. If you like this particular era of Torchwood, then please do also check out my recent review of the restoration of Catherine. Of course, the latest main range release, also featuring Norton and Andy. It's been a very Soho-themed few weeks. And do, of course, also stay tuned on those productions for regular reviews of the latest Big Finish audio dramas. Thanks for watching, have a nice day, I shall see you all next time.